have to make yourself a sympathetic character. Somebody has to be rooted for.
You have to make yourself a sympathetic character. Somebody has to be rooted for. In 1971, Charles Bronson made a decision that would haunt him until the day he died. He turned down a role that could have changed everything. And his daughter later confirmed he never forgave himself. But that wasn't the only secret. Bronson suffered from PTSD long before anyone understood it, carried trauma from the coal mines and the war, and hid a gentle side the world never saw. After his death, lawsuits exploded. His estate was worth millions more than reported, and his family finally spoke up. The real Charles Bronson was nothing like the monster America believed he was. Charles Bronson was born on November 3, 1921, into a house so overcrowded it couldn't be called a home. It was a cold water shack in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, packed with 17 people, 2 parents and 15 children. It didn't have running water, electricity, or even indoor plumbing. They lived right next to the coal tracks where freight cars constantly thundered by and coal dust coated everything inside and out. There were too few beds, so the kids slept in shifts. You didn't just grow up there, you survived. The poverty was so bad that Charles had to wear his sister's hand-me-down dresses to school. He didn't have a choice. The boys in class laughed at him, mocked his clothes, and he just had to stand there and take it. Socks weren't his own either. When he got home from school, he took them off and handed them to his brothers, who wore them into the coal mines. His father, Walter, shaved all the kids bald to keep lice away, but the result was cruel. Charles looked like a prisoner in a dress, barefoot, with no defense against the mockery. He remembered that feeling for the rest of his life. At 9, he started smoking, not to look cool, but to cope. He stole cigarettes from his father, who came home drunk and mean after long days underground. The moment their mother said, "He's coming!" the kids scattered, hiding in corners to avoid him. Charles didn't know if he hated or feared his father more. It wasn't love. It wasn't safety. It was silence and fear. Smoking became a way to breathe in something that wasn't cold dust or tension. In 1931, when Charles was only 10, Walter died of cancer. The family had nothing left, no money, no guidance, just pressure. Charles was sent to work in the mines almost immediately. At first he worked in the office, but soon he was underground like the others, crawling through black tunnels with a lamp strapped to his head. He earned $1 per ton of coal. It took him a week to make $1. That's about $24 in today's money, and he needed it just to help the family eat. He didn't do easy jobs. He volunteered for the worst ones, the ones where people died, like stump removal. That meant crawling through tight spots between mine shafts to clear debris. One wrong move and the whole tunnel could collapse. He saw it happen. In 1927, when he was just 5, an explosion killed 4 miners and trapped 300, including his father. It was his first taste of death. By 16, he was living in constant fear, earning pennies to keep his massive family alive and breathing the same black dust that had already killed his father. At school, Charles couldn't speak English properly. His family only spoke Lithuanian and Russian at home. That made him feel even more isolated. His heavy accent made him sound foreign even years later in the military. He was mocked, misunderstood, and mistaken for an outsider his entire life. He didn't belong in school and he didn't belong in the mines. He belonged nowhere. The mine paid little, so Charles worked extra jobs. He joined his brother in the bakery. One day, he burped loudly in front of customers, and they laughed. For the first time, he noticed he could grab attention. That moment stuck with him. It was the seed of something different, an escape. Still, during the day, he kept digging coal. He sketched dreams on scraps of paper, drew far-off places, imagined a world beyond black tunnels and second-hand socks. But the sock sharing never stopped. Even when he worked double shifts, he still came home, peeled off his only pair of socks, and passed them to someone else who needed them for the night shift. By 1941, Charles was 20 and desperate to break free. He left Ehrenfeld and went to Atlantic City. He became a bellhop, a carnival barker, a guy who knew how to handle drunk tourists and rowdy crowds. His voice got louder, his body tougher, his mind sharper. He didn't realize it yet, but those jobs were training for the screen. One bar fight over unpaid tips nearly landed him in jail. That rage, the kind that came from years of humiliation, never really left him. 2 years later, in 1943, he was drafted into the U.S. Army Air Forces. He started as a truck driver, then trained to become a tail gunner on a B-29 Superfortress bomber. He flew 25 missions over Japan in 1945. During one of them, shrapnel tore through his arms. He was awarded the Purple Heart, flying at high altitudes, freezing, knowing enemy fire could end it all in seconds. That was his reality. He watched friends die in midair. Over 400 B-29s were lost. He survived, but it changed him. The nightmares never left. Yet he once said, "I never had it so good as when I entered the army." After the mines, the war actually felt like relief. When the war ended in 1946, Charles was lost again. He went back to odd jobs in Atlantic City until he met a group of actors vacationing from Philadelphia. That's when he first heard the word theater. He used his GI Bill benefits to study acting in Philadelphia. His thick accent made him a joke to some, but his presence couldn't be ignored. In 1949, he moved to California and joined the Pasadena Playhouse. He didn't fit the clean-cut look of Hollywood, but people noticed him. Then came his first film break. In 1951, a teacher recommended him to director Henry Hathaway. The movie was You're in the Navy Now. It was a small role, but it was enough. One weird talent, his ability to burp on command, actually helped him land the part. He had almost no dialogue, but his eyes said everything. He wasn't polished. He was real. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him yet. One casting agent told him he was too ugly to be a star. His face was rough, scarred from the mines and war. Italians called him Il Brutto, the ugly one. The French called him L'homme sacré, the sacred monster. Critics said he looked like a Clark Gable left out in the sun. Instead of hiding his flaws, Charles embraced them. He trained, boxed, built his body, and kept that hard face just the way it was. It wasn't beauty that made him famous. It was truth. Charles Bronson got his first taste of Hollywood in 1951, playing a thug in the mob for just $50 a day. Back then, he wasn't even Bronson yet. He was Charles Bukinski, sharing a tiny one-room apartment in Hollywood with Jack Klugman. He and his wife Harriet were barely making it. She worked in a department store while he studied acting at Pasadena Playhouse. He took whatever came his way, small, uncredited parts, painting theater sets, or helping out at amusement piers in the summer. He had no agent, no studio deal, just a reputation for being punctual and prepared. Directors remembered him. That got him recast even when his name didn't appear on screen. His break came quietly in 1953 when he played the hulking mute Igor in House of Wax. Still credited as Bukinski, he gave a chilling performance without saying a word. But times were tense. McCarthyism was sweeping Hollywood, and names like Bukinski rang alarm bells. In 1954, his agent urged him to change it. He chose Bronson, plucked straight from a Hollywood street sign. It was a survival move. He filmed Vera Cruz as Bukinski and never looked back. In Vera Cruz, he played Pittsburgh, one of the mercenaries chasing gold. But things got ugly behind the scenes. A producer tried to cheat him on pay. Bronson didn't argue. He cornered the guy and made it physical. That could have been the end of everything. Instead, it revealed the fire he'd carried since his mining days in Pennsylvania. Critics noticed his performance was cold, convincing, and left a mark. Big House USA in 1955 pushed that intensity further. Playing escaped convict Benny Kelly, Bronson poured in memories from the coal mines to shape a character that felt dangerous and real. During a prison yard fight, he went off script. One stuntman ended up in the hospital. Bronson didn't flinch. His face, his build, his presence, everything about him felt authentic. Critics took notice. In 1957's Run of the Arrow, he played a Sioux chief named Blue Buffalo. The casting was problematic. He was in brownface, like many at the time. But Bronson brought unexpected skill to the role. His archery wasn't faked. It came from his World War II days as a tail gunner. Still on set, he clashed with Rod Steiger. Steiger leaned into method acting. Bronson didn't. Their fights over script and style showed Bronson's growing need for control. That instinct would follow him. His first real shot came in 1958 in Roger Corman's Machine Gun Kelly. It was made fast and cheap, 8 days, $60,000. Bronson wasn't the original lead, but when Dick Miller stepped aside, he stepped up. The role was brutal and unnerving. He played Kelly not as a hero, but as a paranoid man terrified of death. The movie hit big for its size, and finally, he wasn't just a face in the background. The same year, he led Showdown at Boot Hill, his first Western lead. Playing a bounty hunter with a conscience, he kept it low-key, letting silence and stare do the work. It was a shift. Bronson wasn't just tough anymore, he was layered. By 1959, he was working with Frank Sinatra in Never So Few. Playing a sergeant in Burma, Bronson stood alongside Sinatra, Steve McQueen, and others in a story about OSS missions. He wasn't center stage, but he was visible. His name was beginning to matter. Then came 1960 and the Magnificent Seven. He earned $50,000, a huge bump. He played Bernardo O'Reilly, the quiet revolutionary. The set was a mess of egos. Steve McQueen and Yul Brynner clashed constantly. McQueen tried stealing scenes. Brynner hired someone to count how often he moved. Bronson stayed out of it. Eli Wallach called him a loner, but his role stuck, especially overseas. In Europe, the film became a hit, and Bronson became a name. In 1961's Master of the World, he worked again with Vincent Price, this time as a government agent chasing a villain with a flying ship. But Bronson hated the script. He wanted to play it like a miner, not a Victorian noble. The set was tense. Price tried to reach him but couldn't. Bronson kept his guard up. The movie didn't land well, and the crew said he felt misplaced. Charles Bronson wasn't just acting when he played Danny Valinsky in The Great Escape. He knew how to dig because he'd actually worked in Pennsylvania coal mines. While filming in Munich, he insisted on digging real tunnels himself, spending hours underground. He cared about how the dirt felt, how the wooden beams held the ceiling, and whether it looked right on camera. His Polish accent clashed with the director's vision, causing reshoots that cost United Artists an extra $100,000 in 1963, which would be nearly $950,000 today. The claustrophobia you see on his face wasn't fake either. He really had it, and he leaned into it. The tunnel scenes took 6 weeks to shoot, and Bronson worked 12-hour shifts to get them right. He even improvised the death scene for Valinsky because he believed the character should go out with meaning. That film ended up making $11.7 million and turned Bronson from a background guy into a leading man. In The Dirty Dozen, Bronson played a soldier on death row named Joseph Władysław. And people still remember the chateau assault scene where he mowed down Nazi officers. The violence was so intense that MGM considered giving it an R rating, which was rare in 1967. On set in London, Bronson got into a bar fight with co-star Lee Marvin, who had apparently stolen a line Bronson had come up with about Polish resistance fighters. Marvin walked away with a broken nose, and production was shut down for 3 days, costing another $75,000. Bronson knew his way around weapons, too. He had been a B-29 gunner during World War II, and the way he handled guns on screen impressed the director so much that they gave him more screen time, 8 minutes more. The movie was made for $5.3 million and ended up making $45.3 million around the world. Bronson took home $150,000, his biggest paycheck at the time, and suddenly European filmmakers were calling. One of those filmmakers was Sergio Leone. He had Bronson in mind when he created Harmonica for Once Upon a Time in the West. Bronson didn't come cheap anymore. When they offered him $100,000, he said no. He asked for $500,000, 5 times more than before, and got it. That made him the highest paid actor on the film, even more than Henry Fonda. Bronson rewrote most of his own lines, cutting 60% of the dialogue to make the character more mysterious. He even learned to play the harmonica again, just so he could do it live on set. That one reveal scene took 23 takes to get right. Filming took 18 weeks in both Monument Valley and Rome's Cinecittà studios under brutal heat that sometimes hit 115 degrees. Bronson came up with the idea for the whistling theme, too. When the movie came out in America, it bombed, but in Europe, it made $14 million and gave Bronson a whole new audience. From there, his quiet, deadly style started shaping what action heroes looked like in the 1970s. Then came Guns for San Sebastian, shot in Mexico's blazing Sonoran desert. Bronson had to ride horses through 120-degree heat, often with Anthony Quinn at his side. The set wasn't just hot, it was dangerous. Equipment kept failing. Bandits threatened the crew. And during one saloon fight scene, Bronson got stung by a scorpion. His hand swelled up, but he didn't stop filming. The medics wanted him to go to the hospital, but he wrapped it in cloth and kept going. MGM couldn't afford any delays, since each lost day would have cost them $50,000. Bronson powered through, and when they filmed his character's death, shot while saving villagers, they got it in one take because the painkillers were wearing off. The movie only made $4.2 million, but Bronson's fearless performance earned him the nickname El Duro from the local crew. That toughness became his calling card. In Villa Rides, Bronson played a real-life revolutionary named Rodulo Fierro opposite Yul Brynner. He brought all his wartime experience as a gunner into the role. There's a scene where he lines up 15 prisoners and pretends to execute them, just like the real Fierro once did. Even though they used blanks, the extras flinched for real because it felt too authentic. Bronson had read about how Fierro once killed 300 people in a single day and made sure the scene reflected that darkness. It took 8 takes over 2 days. He demanded correct ammo belts, period rifles, and even firing stances that matched historical records. His paycheck was $200,000 this time. And while the movie made $12.4 million on a $6.8 million budget, some Hollywood execs were getting nervous. Bronson's performances were getting so intense, they wondered if audiences would start to see him as more violent than heroic. In Rider on the Rain, Bronson finally became a French star. The movie earned $6 million just in France and won a Golden Globe for Best Foreign Film. He played a mysterious American colonel and used his ability to speak Lithuanian and Russian languages he'd picked up growing up in the mines. There was even a nude scene he didn't want to do until the director offered him $50,000 extra on top of his $200,000 base. The film was so successful in Europe, it outgrossed big American movies across France, Italy, and Germany. But when it was finally released in the US 3 years later, it flopped. Then came Violent City, where Bronson played a hitman betrayed by the mafia. This one got dangerous. It was shot in New Orleans and Italy, and rumors say the real mafia didn't like how they were portrayed. Bronson was reportedly carrying a real .38 pistol on set after receiving threats. Italian police confirmed there were safety concerns during the car chase scenes. 47 vehicles, 18 minutes, $380,000 worth of damage. Production had to beef up private security. Ennio Morricone scored the music for $150,000. The flashback-heavy plot was inspired by Out of the Past. Despite all that, the movie barely made a dent in the US. But in Europe, Bronson's star just kept rising. Next was Red Sun, where Bronson starred alongside Japan's Toshiro Mifune and France's Alain Delon. The film had actors speaking 5 different languages, and the director had to juggle English, Japanese, French, German, and Spanish on set. In one sword fight, Bronson used W2UI knife fighting techniques, but a fake katana blade broke and cut his hand badly. He needed 12 stitches, but kept filming with a bandaged hand. They even had to halt filming for weather delays when Madrid unexpectedly got snow. Despite making $12 million, it was barely noticed in America, ranking only 53rd at the US box office. Chowdow's Land pushed things even further. Bronson played an Apache character, and the violence was so raw that animal rights activists, what would later become PETA, protested the use of real animal blood. Director Michael Y. wanted it all to feel real. The budget was just $1.8 million, but $180,000 went into makeup alone. There were 23 on-screen deaths, making it one of the bloodiest westerns of its time. Several countries in Europe censored parts of it. Bronson barely spoke in the film. Fewer than 400 words total, but that silence mixed with brutality would define the 6 films he'd go on to make with Winner. In the Velis Papers, Bronson played Joe Valachi, the man who testified before the U.S. Senate in 1963 and exposed the mafia's existence. To prepare, Bronson met with 3 former mobsters in New York. Producer Dino De Laurentiis paid $25,000 to Velis's old associates for information. During filming in Rome, a photo leaked showing Bronson covered in tattoos, surrounded by real ex-cons working as extras. Rumors spread that Bronson himself had a criminal past, which wasn't true. It got so serious that FBI agents showed up to check the film's accuracy. Some American theaters refused to show it, worried it made him look too rough. But the movie made $18.7 million and cracked into the year's top box office earners. For the first time, he wasn't just big in Europe. He had finally broken through in America, too. In 1974, Charles Bronson went from a familiar face to a global action icon with a single film. Death Wish shocked the country, not just with its vigilante plot, but with its graphic portrayal of violence. A home invasion where Bronson's character loses his wife and daughter in the most brutal way. The film cost only $3 million but brought in $22 million, and Bronson himself earned $1 million. Critics were furious. The New York Times slammed it with a review that read like a warning. Kill. Try it. You'll like it. Others called it despicable. But the outrage worked like rocket fuel. Audiences flocked to see it, pulled in by controversy and a growing fear of rising urban crime. Bronson, refusing to bring his family into New York's chaos, flew back to Vermont every weekend while shooting. What began as a movie turned into a national debate and a phenomenon. That same year, Bronson played a melon farmer named Vince Majestic. On paper, it looked like a quiet role, but it mirrored Bronson's own working-class past in the coal mines of Pennsylvania. The movie ran into trouble when a Colorado farmer, learning that the studio had deep pockets, demanded $10,000 instead of the agreed $3,500 to use his land. It didn't end there. Bronson took the studio to court later for underpaying him another $1 million. He won in 1976. Reviewers pointed out the film missed a chance to say something meaningful about migrant workers. Instead, as one put it, social relevance is soon clobbered by the usual Charles Bronson heroics. In 1975, Bronson stepped into the ring for Hard Times, portraying a silent bare-knuckle fighter during the Great Depression. At 55, he was all muscle, doing his own stunts, even accidentally knocking out fellow actors during real hits. He knew boxing not just as a skill, but as a part of his past, and it showed. The film, shot in New Orleans, captured something raw and authentic. In between brutal punches, his character would feed stray cats or help drug addicts, showing a kind of quiet kindness underneath the steel. The final fight, in an empty warehouse with no crowd, became a legend on its own. The following year, Bronson found himself on a moving train in Idaho, filming Breakheart Pass. Real snow, real danger. He fought on top of icy boxcars alongside a real boxer, Archie Moore, as the train crept down the tracks at around 12 meps. Hypothermia hit the crew, but Bronson pushed through, saying it reminded him of the cold in his World War II missions. At one point, they staged a derailment. He did it himself, no stunt double. It became one of the most dangerous train scenes ever filmed. By 1979, the Cold War was in full swing, and telephone played into the fear perfectly. Bronson, now portraying a KGB agent, had grown up speaking Russian, and he brought that to the role, impressing everyone, including Donald Sutherland. But behind the scenes, things were tense. Rewrites kept changing his dialogue, especially the Russian lines he had practiced endlessly. Eventually, he stormed off set, forcing the studio to pause production. They finally agreed to stop tampering with his script. The movie, which cost $10 million, played heavily on spy tech and psychological warfare. Off-screen, Bronson's life was no less intense. He met actress Jill Ireland on the set of The Great Escape in 1963 while she was still married to David McCallum. 5 years later, they were married. She was 15 years younger and they raised 2 daughters, one biological, one adopted. Their love seemed unstoppable until 1984 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had a mastectomy and became a public voice for cancer awareness, even earning an award from Ronald Reagan. But the disease returned. She died in their Malibu home in 1990 at only 54. Bronson never got over it. His daughter later revealed he kept writing her love letters for years after she passed. His first marriage was a very different story. Back in 1949, when he was a broke actor in Philadelphia, he married Harriet Tendler, the daughter of a wealthy farmer. She supported them both while he chased roles. They had 2 kids, Suzanne and Tony. But by the time Hollywood noticed him in the 1960s, their marriage was falling apart. She later accused him of having multiple affairs on set, particularly during the making of The Magnificent Seven. Their divorce in 1965 was bitter. And although Bronson got custody of the kids, Tendler claimed he traded loyalty for fame. As the 1980s rolled in, the Death Wish sequels began multiplying. The violence escalated. Critics recoiled. Roger Ebert gave Death Wish 2 no stars at all, but the audience kept coming. Death Wish 3 brought bazookas. Death Wish 4 mixed vigilante justice with Reagan-era drug politics. The stunts became more dangerous, too. During filming in 1982, a misfired blank cartridge burned Bronson's face. Still, he kept going. Over the next decade, the sequels earned over $100 million. In 1998, at 77, Bronson married again, this time to actress Kim Weeks, born in 1960. But soon after, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. His mind faded. He became paranoid. In 2002, confused and frightened, he even sued Kim for elder abuse. Though the case was settled, despite everything, she stayed with him. Lung cancer caused by decades of smoking eventually took over. He died in 2003 at age 81 in Los Angeles. A year before his death, something bizarre happened. A chemist from Kentucky, Audrey Jean Canower, rewrote her will by scribbling on a list of emergency phone numbers. She left her entire $300,000 estate to Charles Bronson, whom she had never met. She had rented his movies obsessively, cut out newspaper clippings, and idolized him. Her family had expected only $20,000. Bronson quietly donated every cent he received to charity. After his death, his daughters began speaking out. Zulia revealed that Bronson kept a drawer full of toys just for her: crayons, marbles, little books.
He would peek into her room every morning just to see her smile.
Katrina remembered how he raised her like his own after Jill Ireland's death. They described a soft man who loved quietly. Zuleika even found love letters written decades after her mother's passing. His estate turned out to be worth $45 million, not the $1.5 million figure that floated around. Kim got an $8 million mansion and $1.6 million in cash. His children inherited 2 other homes worth $10 million combined. But lawsuits came fast, from ex-wives, from studios, from family. Even years later, his estate was fighting for millions in unpaid film royalties. In what may have been his biggest regret, Bronson turned down the role of Dirty Harry in 1971. He didn't like the script's violence, worried it would affect his children. Clint Eastwood took the role and ran with it. Bronson earned less, and while Death Wish gave him fame, it never quite matched what Dirty Harry became. His daughter said he regretted it for the rest of his life. But the steel behind his eyes wasn't just acting. Bronson had lived through hell. Born in 1921, he grew up so poor he wore dresses to school because there were no boy clothes left. He worked in coal mines as a child, earning $1 per ton. In World War II, he flew 25 missions over Japan in a B-29 bomber and earned a Purple Heart. His body was tough, but his mind carried scars no one could see. His daughters say he had PTSD long before anyone knew the term. That's what fueled the rage in his performances. And that's why other action stars, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Willis, all looked up to him. Even after death, his legacy won't sit still. In 2018, Hollywood remade Death Wish with Bruce Willis. It made $49 million, but critics weren't impressed. His family spoke out, saying the real Bronson was nothing like the blood-soaked image he became known for. They said he was shy. He painted. He laughed with his grandkids. His daughter found that he preferred galleries to guns. His grave in Vermont has become a pilgrimage spot. But those who go there now are reminded by his family that behind every clenched jaw and slow walk was a man who simply wanted to protect the people he loved.